according to Bill Simmons, he has stated that NBC has now got the TV rights for the NBA, that they were able to purchase it and they're going to get it back very soon. I believe he said it's going to be during the start of the 25-26 season. So they'll get it back. They won the bidding war allegedly from TNT. That's what he's saying. We don't know if it's 100% accurate, but more and more sources are saying that is probably true what he said, that NBC got the rights back for the NBA. So what that means is that TNT will obviously lose the rights and that Inside the NBA will no longer exist after the 25-26 season. Now, there's a lot of people frustrated about this and they're angry, depressed, sad, combination of all these emotions about this happening. I think this is especially harder for younger people who are now in their 20s and maybe even early 30s. I would say those people probably have no recollection of what it was like before Charles Barkley was on that show, what Inside the NBA was even like. It did exist before Charles Barkley. That's probably what a lot of young people don't realize. Inside the NBA has been going on for a very long time, since the late 80s, 90s. Go watch old YouTube clips of Ernie Johnson during the 90s and you'll see what it was like. It was like any other pregame show, halftime show, postgame. Granted, I know Inside the NBA's postgame, but you get what I'm saying. It was just like any other postgame show you see on these other networks, just about the game, analysts about the game, pretty much that type of stuff, just simple stuff you're talking about the game, and that's really what it was. It's always been like that across all the networks. Graham, I'm not a fan of ESPN, but what you see on ESPN today, when it comes to their post-game show, it's pretty much always been like that, really. That's how it was when I was growing up during the 90s when it was on NBC. Now, I'll say this about NBC. Were they ever funny like Inside the NBA with Charles Barkley? No, they weren't, but I actually liked the NBA on NBC during the 90s. It was great. Their pregame shows were awesome. Their intros were epic. YouTube them, you'll see what I'm talking about. They knew how to market the game really well. I think better than any TV network has done since then. They knew how to hype up rivalries much better. They were just so much better at all those things and doing the pregame build-up. They had people who actually knew about basketball, knew what the hell they were talking about. And even the people who weren't basketball experts, just people like Peter Vesey, they weren't insufferable. And it's weird for me to say it. They weren't insufferable like the guys you have today, just who are just annoying, like Stephen A. Smith, just that type of personality. I actually liked the professionalism back then. The interviews were great back then. Just guys ask difficult questions to these players that they don't really ask today. Just they would actually ask them like, hey, you had a crappy game the other night, or you choked underneath pressure. What are you going to do now? Just those interviews were epic. I still YouTube some of those old interviews, especially the ones with Shaq. They're hysterical, in which they're actually asking him the difficult questions, and he's obviously pissed off about it. But that's what it was back then. It was really a lot of professionalism. Now, I never hated Inside the NBA. It debuted when I was in high school, so that shows you how old I am. And I liked it from the beginning. I thought it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed Barkley's humor. I still do to this day. Kenny and Ernie, those were the main guys, obviously, back at the start of it when I was in high school and throughout the 2000s and up until 2010. And then every now and then you would have Chris Webber or Magic Johnson as the fourth guy on that show. And that was fine, too. Neither of those guys were bad. They complimented Charles and the rest of those guys really well. And I think there was just this acceptance by Webber and even Magic, a guy who had higher status than Charles as a player, that Charles was the star of the show. He was the guy. This was his show. And basically, they let Charles run the show and they would compliment him. And that's the way it should be. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that the dynamics of the show really changed once Shaq got on there. And I'm not going to lie, I hate Shaq. I don't find him funny. His humor is stupid. His humor is for kids. Kids and stupid people. Those are only two people that find him funny. I find it obnoxious whenever he interrupts Charles, whenever he interjects his stupid takes. Just, they're terrible. I'm tired of him hearing every time Barkley disagrees with him about something basketball-wise, that, hey, Charles, shut up. I have 4 rings. Google me. I just want to say, bitch, please. We're done with you. I don't want to hear your four rings. I don't give a fuck about your four rings. Just shut up. It drives me nuts. But Shaq tainted that show, I feel. It's never been great since Shaq has been on there for like 12, 13 years. Prior to Shaq, it was epically great. It was amazing. But once he got in there, he ruined the show. I feel like adding Shaq to that show was basically it's like swimming in a pool of water that's really clean and pure, and then then someone pisses in the water, and it's no longer great. You can no longer swim in the pool again. It's just tainted. I feel that's what Shaq did to that show. So I will not miss Inside the NBA because to me it's been dead the last 12 or 13 years. It died 12, 13 years ago when they added Shaq to that show. What my hope is that whoever the NBC brings over, that they don't bring over Shaq or Stephen A or any of those people. I hate listening to their takes, especially Shaq. I just hope they don't bring him over. Now, maybe they'll bring Barkley over. If not, that's fine too. I know people are going to get emotional, but Barkley's not going anywhere. You will always have a big media presence. It may not be on the major networks like NBC. I actually think Barkley should create his own YouTube channel where he'll be unrestricted to say whatever he wants and he won't have to worry about saying anything. Just he can still make a ton of money in that format. But I'm not sure if he wants to take that risk, but that option is always on the table for him. There's other networks that can purchase him too, like Fox Sports. They're desperate for ratings. They could give him his own show, his own 1 hour segment to do his thing, and he can bring people on. So it's not the end of the world. It's just like life. Everything changes. Nothing stays forever. And sometimes we do need the change. I feel just inside the NBA has really been stagnant for 12 or 13 years in my eyes since they added Shaq. I didn't realize how much I hated Shaq. Granted, I've always hated Shaq, but how much he's held back the show until like a week or two ago when Dirk Nowitzki was in his place. Did Dirk add anything really great or insightful? No. But the best thing about Dirk being there was Charles got to be Charles, and he got to run the show without being interrupted with stupid takes, without stupid arguments, and it was great. That's what we needed. So we're not going to get that until Shaq is gone. So that's why I'm down with Inside the NBA just being done after this year or next year, whenever they have to be kicked off the air. It's fine. I'll be over it. But then again, I can remember life before Inside the NBA. It may be harder for these young people who don't, but they'll get over it. That's the way I look at it. Just they'll adjust to it. It's not the end of the world. So that's all I have to say about this.